This video is from my series that walks you through how to build a career in film and television production.
In this book, we're going to talk about the industry, how it's structured, what it is, and who the players are. We'll talk about building a financier map so you can understand the sources of money, both in film and television financing, what matters, and who the real players are. Then we're going to talk about the targets. Because obviously, the financiers, the studios, and the OTTs, and when I say OTTs, I mean streamers, Netflix, Hulu, Disney+, HBO Max, etc. They're the places that are making shows of all kinds. The likelihood that you and the majority of us will be getting meetings there is pretty low. But those companies all have production companies that are responsible for creating the shows under a structure of overhead, first look, and output deals. Those production companies and the people who work in and for them are your target. They are typically called producers. That's a very generic term, but for simplicity we'll call them production companies. And then we're going to talk about your vertical, connecting some dots, how to connect dots, of those people that you're researching so that you can get on their radar and find a referral for work. And then in the next section, we're going to build a networking map of your 10 to 20 admired shows, picking up the names of people who actually work on those shows. That will likely build a list of 100 to 200 people that you're going to distill down to 2 to 3 lists of people to contact. And we're going to see how we can find a way of getting to those people using social channels and email if available. And finally, you'll research and collect information of how you might connect with these people. That's the part where we use LinkedIn, Facebook, the Variety database, any other kind of database we can find, any alumni or professional networks that you might have been through or belong to. So 4 weeks. Let's start with the structure I have laid out in the book. First, you finish the book and you begin researching your vertical, your path, and your wider industry. This work is designed to be completed in 4 weeks. After that work is complete, you are contacting people in key positions who can recommend you for an open job if asked by someone that they know. Or in the best outcome, they can offer you a job. But that's not our primary ask. Hollywood is a business of referrals, and you will most likely get the first job when a person who is already working in the business refers you. You get that referral by knowing, and this is very relative, important people. I say important is relative because an assistant who sits on a producer's desk can be just as important as the producer he or she works for. Your journey to getting a referral from an important person begins by impressing them with your persistence, curiosity, and knowledge of how the industry actually works. The purpose of this book is to build an understanding of the entertainment industry, specifically film and television production, and how you fit in it and how to compete in it. Hollywood from the outside is a confusing black box. It does not have a place where you go to apply for a job. Oh, this is where I go, on the internet, to learn what recruiters and HR offices are hiring for the next Bond film or the next season #1 of Netflix #1 show. You will never get an answer to the question, what is the website I go to for a job in production? This is a referral business, and how you make that initial connection and where you make that initial connection is going to have a profound impact on your future as a participant in the industry. It will have an impact on how you build and modify those connections over time. How have I set up this process? The work is done by you so that the information you need to compete fits your goals, and more importantly, so you internalize it. I'm giving you techniques and systems. I'm giving you direction and showing you a process and what to access, such that you're going to use these tools over and over again. And every time you get to the next level in your career, you will see the change. What you want and where you want to go is going to change. At some point, you're going to look around and go, I want to do something slightly different. That is how this process in this book is designed, to help you learn how to deal with and understand change. This process is also how I have always operated. This has been my process for over 30 years. There is wide variation in the business. Writers, directors, actors, all have a particular and different path. Producers have a different path, a slightly different path. Crew have a completely different path, and so do corporate jobs. We're going to talk specifically about you, but the first step in that process is getting clear about exactly what are your goals. What are you going to be, and how does that fit together with the industry? And in order to understand how that fits, you have to understand the industry as it relates to you and your path. Now remember, as I'm going through this chapter, and all the other chapters for that matter, I will refer to movies or a movie career. What I'm talking about is film production generally. Feature film, television, studio, indie, OTT, network, commercial, award, whatever. When you see or hear me say movie, think my career goal. When I say my career goal, I'm talking about your career goal. When you hear me say show, it is generic and could also include feature films. We call a movie a show, and we call episodic TV a show, and we call an award show a show. Show is interchangeable with project or movie. A feature film is a show, dramatic TV is a show, award show is a show. Everything is a show. Over the course of this book, what we will talk about is broken down into 4 different categories: discovery, industry map, implementing your map, informational interviews. Discovery. Number 1 is discovery. Getting clear about what you're striving for and how you fit into the industry, that's the first step. Industry map. The second phase is the industry map. We're going to map out distributors, networks, financiers, executives, hiring managers to get an understanding of who those people are and who you should be connecting with. That is the most important and time-consuming part of the work that you'll be doing. Remember, Hollywood is a business of networking and understanding who to talk to, such that you can avoid the people who look like they have access, who look like they have distribution, who look like they're actually making a movie. Who can help me move my career forward? This is one of the most important questions to ask, and understanding the players in the industry is part of that question. Once you understand that, you will start to know when a project is coming up, whether or not you are interested in working on that project. You will know in advance what jobs are available on new shows. As a side note, and probably a question to ask yourself later on in your career, is it worth taking a job that has no money, that has no distributor, that is a festival thing? There is a time and place to do that. In the early part of your career, however, that is probably not the time nor the place. You are at an age and at a point in your career where you need to be working on studio, network, and OTT content. And it needs to be funded. It needs to have distribution, and it needs to accelerate and move your career forward. This is super important at the beginning of your career. One of the most important concepts to understand now and to hold in the back of your head all the time: in production, the network that you build now will have a profound influence on your career, the kind of work you get, and the income that you will achieve. Get into the system that produces a ton of content and later cherry pick the creative and interesting shows that feed your soul. In the beginning, you need to learn the landscape and the systems of how content gets made, and more importantly, how it gets sold and generates revenue. Implementing your map. Then, we will work on implementing that map. What does that mean? Are you going to put the map into practice so you can take action on getting connected? Are you going to identify the people, the actual names of people who work on shows? Are you going to target those individuals, maybe a dozen or a half dozen people who you want to initially make a connection with? In all likelihood, you will have built a list of 100 to 200 names across 20 shows of people who work in your vertical and in your path. Your first step in implementing your map is to make contact with a few at first and see what the take rate is, and then move on to the next batch and so on, until you find one person out of 100 or 200 who you can interview about the business and their career path. Informational interviews. After that, you will set informational interviews. The goal of setting informational interviews is to find one person that you can make a connection with, that you can network with. That will ultimately expand out from meeting one person who was working in the industry like a spider web. You are only asking for one person to start a fire, but once you find that person, it typically accelerates from there. Once you get the person to listen, the person you can talk to, and when I say talk to, you are not selling them anything. You are literally just sitting in front of them and letting them talk about themselves. That is the superpower here. As soon as you ask for a job, as soon as you ask them to read your script, all of a sudden they ghost. As a dear friend of mine who worked in development for decades would say, When you ask someone to read your script, you're essentially asking a painter to paint your house for free. She would hear from book authors who were not published and had written a book about who knows what, hemophilia cowboys. She would get the request to read the book, and her joking response in the hallway was, "Will you paint my house?" I'm going to talk about techniques and methods for getting to those people, for setting informational interviews. That is the entry-level step for making connections with people. And then once you make that connection, you are building a network. At the end of your interview, you are then going to ask that person, "Can I talk to 2 or 3 other people? Can you recommend somebody else I can talk to? I want to gather as much information as I can." And this is putting on the journalism hat. That is essentially what you're doing. You're becoming a journalist for a short period of time, but instead of writing a story for a newspaper or a book or whatever, you're essentially doing it for your own career. Get pigeonholed and get used to it. As you are developing your career, my recommendation is to get pigeonholed. You need to present yourself as someone who has a particular goal, a clear focus, and a definition that the person you're selling to can put into a box that they understand. That's important. So I'm going to say it again. A box that they understand. This is a business that puts everything into a box, and the reason they do that is because it's a copycat business. So when one movie does well, you will see 20 more just like it. They will be just like the one that made a lot of money. You will not see one movie that does well, that is a new idea, very often. They come around once or twice a year, maybe, and sometimes less frequently than that. So this is a business of ideas that are copied over and over, and it's just like a printing press. We replicate it, but with different names and a slightly different twist on a story. Once you start developing your list of targets and your informational interviews, you will start building your network. This is, by far, the most angst-provoking part of working in production. Everyone has some level of trepidation when it comes to networking. Some people do, some people do not. Some folks just operate from, I don't give a f what they think. I'm focused and I'm doing it. Other people are like, hey, but you know, I kind of feel like they don't really give a f about me. Okay, get over it. That's because working in production is selling all the time. But there are ways to do it so you don't feel uncomfortable or icky. And by the way, they don't give a shit about you. Stop thinking that anybody cares what you think about yourself. I network by making friends with people I want to work with. I do it by connecting often and regularly, so when I'm looking for work, it doesn't seem like a naked pitch for helping me out. I talk with my friends about many things other than just a job or production. Remember, as a participant in film and television production, you're running a business. You are an entrepreneur, and you have to build connections to be successful. That's the program, designed to be executed over 4 weeks. You can do it in less if you would like, or more if that suits you and your schedule, but it is designed to be spread out over 4 weeks so that you can spend a good amount of time digging into the weeds and researching the companies, the industry, and the people you want to target for the kind of work you're ultimately trying to achieve. The heavy lifting, the deep show research, and the digging for information is all front-loaded. In the first 2 or 3 weeks, you will spend the vast majority of your time looking for a needle in a haystack, pulling research out of the movie databases and the industry trades. The last week, you will spend time working on lining up and streamlining your pitch for setting up informational interviews. Some things to consider. This book does not talk about how to operate your career in Hollywood, but you need to know about a few key points. Once you get the first job, what should you do? When getting the first job, you will need to know what to expect and how to excel in that job. Update your credits on your first day in the job. Say yes to everything that is not illegal or immoral. Be a go-to person who helps the person you are working for. Just keep your ear to the ground and pay attention. Opportunity will come. You just need to be prepared to listen for it. You need to think about operating your brand. You are creating a brand whether you know it or not. Are you a pain in the ass who creates drama? Or are you a prima donna? All are a quick way to get thrown out of Hollywood or put into work jail for a while, or in some cases, forever. Or are you a person who does a good job, smiles all the time, and is unpleasant to talk to? That is your brand. It exists and it matters to the work you get in the future. You will also need to think about messaging, budgeting, and how to deal with schizophrenic income, meaning one day you make $1,000 a day on a show, and the next day you make $500 a day, doing the same work. Income in production is not consistent. You will be a freelancer working for no single person or company all the time. That is reality. You're running a business. You are an entrepreneur. Get used to it and behave in your own best interest. So what's your out plan? One last note about working in film and TV production. The final stage of your career needs to have an out plan. This is a business of young people. It is uncommon for people to work in film production, except possibly writers and directors, and to some extent producers, but it's pretty uncommon for them to be 45, 50, or 60 for sure. Woody Allen is the anomaly, and he came of age as a director and became famous in his 20s. From that perspective, I would spend a little bit of time thinking about what you will do in 15 or 20 years from now. Eventually you have an expiration date, and what are you going to do when that expiration date comes? Just understand, it is coming, and how do you want to plan for it? Think in terms of the skills you're going to develop in production. How are you going to re-educate yourself? Because you're going to need to. And the lifestyle that you're accustomed to living while working in film and TV production, it's very different than everywhere else in the world. To be clear, if you find your way into Hollywood and move up in the ranks, you will make good money and have zero transferable skills. If you look at a similar job to what you do in film production, they typically make 40 to 50% less than we make in production. Be prepared for that and build a lifestyle that will not impact your ability to survive on 40 to 50% less income when the expiration date does actually come.